All right, everybody, welcome to Fort Myers, Florida at night. We're gonna go Uber in the hood at night. Let's see what happens. Alright everybody, so as today's video would suggest, I went Ubering in the hood. I just became an Uber driver as a hobby to do it on the side here and there, and it's a great way to meet people. My first day doing Uber was kind of crazy. I had two people in the car that were crying, one person that was borderline needing some serious mental help, so it was kind of a crazy day, and I hope that most of the time when you Uber, it isn't this crazy, because it is this crazy all the time. I may not be interested in doing this, not even as a side hustle. So all of the crazy things happened during the daytime while Ubering in Bradenton and in Sarasota, but I got one person who needed to go to Fort Myers, and I figured, why the crap not? The whole day, like my first day on Uber, I made $188, but here's the catch. I worked 11 hours and I probably spent about $70 in gas, which means I only actually made $112 roughly. But already I can tell you that looking at it from a new perspective, I probably would have made more money on the second day simply by what I've learned during the first day. There is a learning curve, and I guess once I get through that learning curve, I'll learn what type of trips not to take, like the trip that landed me in Fort Myers. It only paid $50 driving through the rain from Sarasota to Fort Myers. It really wasn't worth it. If I had just stayed in Sarasota picking up shorter trips, I probably would have made the same amount of money in half the time and a quarter of the mileage. But again, it was my first day doing Uber, so I had absolutely no idea what the crap I was doing. I am just learning as I'm going. So right around here, I got the first notification. So we're going to go pick the person up. It's on Scott Street, so it's kind of really one of the worst neighborhoods in Fort Myers, and it is like 11:30 at night already. Just as a quick glance, it looks like Sarasota pays a lot better than Fort Myers, but in Fort Myers you get more tips because it's a totally different type of person taking an Uber in Fort Myers versus taking an Uber in Sarasota. In Fort Myers, you got a lot more people going out to drink, and thus those types of people are going to tip you more, where in Bradenton and Sarasota, it's people who actually use Uber like as a regular thing from their house to go somewhere, and those people I think are less likely to pay you. But again, it's only my first day, so any conclusion I come to now really isn't that experience, but eventually I will figure this crap out. But since I landed in Fort Myers, I said let me just go into the hood at night. So right now we're on Palm Beach Boulevard and we're heading to Scott Street. It looks like during the nighttime there's a surge during the night, like in like the worst neighborhoods, because it looks like drivers are afraid to go to these areas at night. So it seems like around here in this part of Fort Myers, there's like a surge. In other words, there weren't enough drivers willing to go into this neighborhood at night. So it was pretty easy to pick people up because most drivers are afraid to go into these neighborhoods at night. They'd rather stick to the large shopping centers or the airport. In these neighborhoods, you can get a lot of rides because people are kind of, well, pretty much terrified to go in here at night. So we're going to go pick up our first person, and I'm kind of going to be very vague about the people I'm dealing with on today's video, and if I do this moving forward, because I want to give my, people that use my Uber, like, privacy. I'm not going to just go out here and tell you every person I dealt with. That would be kind of weird, but the first person that I'm picking up is a female, and we are taking her to Fort Myers. So again, it's kind of like a really crappy neighborhood. It's the type of neighborhood you definitely don't go into at night, and going in here at night to pick up a complete stranger to take them to North Fort Myers definitely feels sketchy. But again, that's why we were easily able to get rides in this neighborhood, because other drivers were kind of afraid. Now in this neighborhood, you also have a lot of those minivan taxis, but the minivan taxis are mostly only picking up illegals, and a lot of the people that are U.S. citizens, those drivers are going to be afraid to pick them up because then they're more likely to get robbed. I know that's a horrible thing to say, but that's kind of how it goes. So we pick up our first person, and we're off to North Fort Myers. She was a really nice person. And again, I dealt with like 16 people the first day I did this Uber thing, and the first person that I picked up earlier in the day smelled really, really bad. I mean, this person's hygiene was so bad that I literally had to put the windows down And I will say this: I'm not gonna be too specific on everybody that I deal with, but I also had like 3 people out of the 16 that were like too gangster to talk to me. These are the dudes that, like, got the dreads. They're listening to their headphones. They won't make eye contact with you, and if you try to start some small conversation, they're too gangster to talk to you. Like, they feel like you're a peasant to them because you're not gangster enough. Looks like an eviction right there. But there were 3 people that I dealt with throughout the day that were just too gangster to talk to a mere peasant like me. So as you're doing these like poor neighborhoods, you'll get the dudes that you can just tell they're not sociable. It's usually a young male, kind of urban attire. A lot of these kids, they think they're just too gangster to talk to a normal person. So those types of people, do not start conversation with them. You almost automatically, like this person, when she got in the car, we had a nice, decent conversation the whole time. So me and her are right now in the truck having an awesome, normal conversation. Just a down to earth people, normal people. But a lot of the younger kids you get, you're gonna know off the bat they just don't have any social skills. So, welcome them to the vehicle and welcome them out. But you'll notice that there's individuals that just, they do not want to talk. They have absolutely no social skills, and you're not cool enough for them. What's nice about this particular passenger is that we're going from this side of Fort Myers, Palm Beach Boulevard. We'll have to drive through downtown, across the bridge, and get us over into North Fort Myers. So from one port end of the city to the other. It's raining, so there's not too much going on Palm Beach Boulevard. It's a beautiful road, actually. You got the tall palm trees. This neighborhood has kind of been on a downfall, especially since the immigration laws took place. It just became a ghost town. But it has a lot of potential. It really did. And at one point, this was a beautiful neighborhood, especially on the right side, back towards the water. But you had the hurricane come through and flood just about every single house on the right side of the road. In some neighborhoods back in here, about 80% of the population was undocumented migrant workers, and that's the construction workforce of Southwest Florida. So none of those people really thrilled about the law. A lot of them left. Police is usually very heavy presence in this area, and that scared a lot of people away. They were just here to work, and it got too hot, so they left. So this neighborhood's kind of been struggling to keep people in there, but there's still a lot of food trucks. It's still mostly all Latin businesses. Many of the Latin restaurants here just are lacking flavor, so I think the food trucks, if you're coming through this neighborhood, might be a better option. I've tried every single Latin restaurant along the strip, and many years ago they were great, but recently they're just not good. It's been kind of a rough little period for this part of Fort Myers. A lot of the Latin population in this neighborhood has left. A lot of businesses have closed. The restaurants that are open are just not that great. It's an area that's been really struggling, and I really hope that this neighborhood recovers, that good people move in, because it definitely deserves better. I mean, it's a nice looking neighborhood. It's not a bad looking neighborhood. It's just gone to crap. And now with all the people that left, it feels like a ghost town. It really needs a lot of work, a lot of improvement. And the Lee County Sheriff's Office, the state of Florida, all the laws that are coming in have just further kind of put this neighborhood into a state of marginalization where things don't look like they're going to get any better. But we're approaching downtown now. You can see downtown Fort Myers here. Supposedly downtown Fort Myers was an area to get good people like hop in, but I'll be honest, there was nobody in downtown Fort Myers. I couldn't get a ride on the way in or the way out. I was around downtown Fort Myers, and it didn't seem like there was too many people looking for rides in downtown. All right, so we'll drive through downtown Fort Myers, and then I'll catch up with you guys in a little bit once we drop off this person. All right, so at this point, I had done about 14 people throughout the whole entire day. I was just exhausted and tired, so I decided to go to the Applebee's in Norfolk Myers and get something to eat because I was just starving. I was tired. Again, I did this thing for 11 hours. It was the first day. It took forever for them to approve my background check, so I was just like really excited to finally do this. That's why I went all out and did it the whole day just to get a feel for it. And today's day two, and I'm not as thrilled about it, but I know I'm going to keep doing this just as a little thing and to entertain myself inside. I noticed they're building brand new apartment complexes all over Fort Myers. These are like those 4-story apartments that are going everywhere in Florida. I never thought they would be building these in North Fort Myers since there's so much homelessness and problems, and it's just a bad neighborhood. But you can see here on the left that they're actually building new apartments in North Fort Myers. I thought that was kind of crazy. It seems like a crazy place to put in new apartments, but there's actually entire communities of just nothing but apartments going in. So finally, it's like really late at night. I'm starving, going into Applebee's to get something to eat because I hadn't eaten anything all day. Literally, I was just from person to person to person to person, barely doing anything at all, barely even had a water all day. I was just picking people up one after the other. All right, if you think about it, it would kind of make sense for you to put these new apartments in North Fort Myers because it's so close to downtown Fort Myers. But at the same time, North Fort Myers is just nothing more than a rundown area. So right around here, I picked up a ride right here. It was somebody in Central Fort Myers. So we're going to go now and pick that person up. And again, it's in a fairly bad neighborhood that you probably wouldn't want to be in at night. But let's go over there and pick this person up. They're somewhere off of Hanson. All right, so customer on board. We picked them up in this little area right here, and they are going to another pretty bad area in Fort Myers. So from one residential neighborhood to the next at night. And I do want to tell you guys a lot about the people that I'm dealing with, but like I dealt with one person who was, and it's not the person who's in the car with me. This person was one of the quiet ones who didn't want to talk, which is fine. But one of the persons that I dealt with on my first day was crying. I had two people that cried in the vehicle. The first one, I was able to cheer them up. We had a lot in common, Cuban people like me, and we talked about, travel and this and that. And I was able to cheer this person back up because they were clearly having a really bad day when I picked them up. Just one of those people that's just having a horrible day, so I was able to cheer that person up. Now, the second person that cried, this person probably needed like real professional help. I think it was beyond me to try to even counsel this person or help them at all. I just told the person, you need help. I can't help you. But the person, which had a lot of problems, just complete mess. I really hope this person's able to figure out their lives. But again, a lot of times life is consequences. You live a certain lifestyle, you get yourself so deep into certain things, and then you think that everything's cool, but then one day you find the consequences. A lot of people that use Uber are using Uber because they got a DUI, or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, right? So there are people that don't have a driver's license. A lot of the people are just traveling tourists. Like, those are always fun people because they're having a great time. If they've been picked up at a restaurant and you're driving them home, those people are usually very happy. But then you got the ones that are just, they're in an Uber because they have 5 DUIs and today's not a good day for that person because they're still struggling with their own personal problems. And these types of people can get a little out of hand. They want to talk about things you may not want to talk about. Now, I'm a social butterfly. I'll talk about anything. But some of the conversations that these people want to have, like, I do the homeless camp videos, and I've been to a lot of bad neighborhoods, so I think I'm well versed in dealing with people in bad environments, right? But what I learned doing Uber is that there's actually a whole nother world of debauchery out there that I wasn't even aware existed. And I'm a little concerned that it's more bad environment than I want to be around. It's different when you have somebody in your car and you're taking them somewhere. For like 8 minutes, you become part of this person's life, and you're just taking this person from point A to point B in theory. But if they want to talk to you and they are dealing with personal problems or crying their head off because they're running away from a bad situation or stuff like that, and then you end up in a situation where you're like, okay, I'm just driving this person from point A to point B for $8, but now I've become a therapist or something, And I think that's probably the hardest part of Ubering. And I talked to other people who recently started doing Uber, and they haven't had none of these crazy encounters that I've had, but it could just be my luck. It could just be something else. I'm not sure. I've talked to other people who started doing Uber recently, and I tell them what I've seen so far, and they're like, yeah, you are having a bad little stretch there, because other people that have started driving for Uber tell me that they're customers are pretty much normal people. And it's interesting because, like I've said, I've gone to all these bad neighborhoods. I've done homeless camp videos, and I actually feel more uncomfortable with some of the customers that I have in the backseat of the truck than I do going into homeless camps with homeless people. Homeless people don't have a lot of responsibilities. They've kind of quit on life, and I'm used to dealing with the homeless, and now I'm dealing with the carless. And I'll tell you, the homeless people are a lot more chill. Like, the carless people seem like more desperate a lot of times. We hear so much about the homeless in the United States, but having a carless situation in the United States is another nightmare. One we perhaps don't hear enough about. But I will tell you that, it was really fun picking up people. I ended up on Lido Key on the island, Siesta Key. Those types of people are really fun to work with. Like, they're on vacation, they're having a blast. I would say that maybe, 30% of the people I dealt with were extraordinarily chill, very to themselves. About 30% of them were just having an absolute blast. Very fun people. And then the other 30% were people that you could just smell them, bad hygiene, personal problems, wanting to talk about things you probably are not interested in talking to with a complete stranger. So it seems like to me, it's kind of like a mix. But in the future, I can understand why most Uber drivers are going to shy away from bad neighborhoods at night, shy away from just sketchy situations, and kind of stick to like the airports and downtowns and bars and stuff like that, or a suburban area, because when you get into like the urban areas and kind of bad neighborhoods, it's just but even then, I picked up one person in the suburbs that you would think in this neighborhood they wouldn't be plagued with problems, and they were. But it's interesting how, like, people have different things going on. Like, a lot of people just are plagued with problems. They really are. Not everybody that ends up carless. I mean, you got people that are on vacation, people that are traveling, going from the airport to the hotel. They have a car somewhere, and they're just using Uber as a service. You got other people who just simply, you can tell, are full-time YouTubers. Like, they don't have a car, they don't want to drive, they'd rather have a chauffeur. Fine. Those people are cool. The ones that are just kind of perplexingly odd are the ones that are kind of in an Uber, and you can kind of tell like they're just going through something as you're picking them up. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I thought I was familiar with people's problems on a personal level because I do the homeless camp videos, and I thought that is as bad as life can get. But I will tell you, some of these people that are using an Uber, going from like their house to their dental office or from whatever, just like regular people, seem to be more bothered by life, more irritable, more frustrated, more plagued with problems than some of the people that are homeless. Because a lot of times, once people are homeless, they're like, okay, this sucks, I'm here, but at least I don't have any responsibilities. But the people that are out there trying to figure things out, they're like trying not to be homeless. They're like borderline. They're not quite homeless yet, but they're just plagued with problems that could lead to homelessness. Those people are actually more on edge than people that are already homeless. So we're back on Palm Beach Boulevard once again. We're going to drop this person off in a neighborhood in Tice. It's not just a really bad neighborhood. It's also one of the worst streets in the bad neighborhood. So it's definitely the type of place you're going to feel uncomfortable going to at night. But again, you're getting paid $7 to do this. I mean, how do you not risk your life for $7, right? So the night's total, I think, was 7, 7, and 7 for $22. We roughly risked our life going into some sketchy neighborhoods. I probably spent, I don't know, a good $6 on gas, meaning that for roughly $13, I risked my life out there in some bad neighborhoods in Fort Myers. And, well, if you're not doing anything with your life, it's a great little gig. If you have a car that's very economical, you could probably make $200 a day doing this crap. My truck is probably not Uber friendly. I'm getting 16 miles to the gallon on a good day, and it seems like that's not going to be enough to actually make it worth my while to be a full-time Uber driver. Not that I want to do that, but there are days where I just want to switch up the routine, and it was a nice change of pace to try this, and I'm excited to go out there and do it again. But I will tell you, I just have to figure out the peak hours and a more convenient schedule, because hopping from one place to the next and then ending up 100 miles from home like I did on this day, that doesn't really seem like that's how you want to go about Uber. It seems like you need to pick an area where there's a lot of short rides, and perhaps an area like maybe on the island or near the beach, where you're just picking people up one short jump to the next, to the next, to the next, and around a more comfortable setting. But we dropped this person off here in these apartments in this little area around here, which is, again, not exactly where you want to be at night. Yeah, this is definitely a part of Fort Myers you do not want to be in late at night. It's just a really bad neighborhood. But at the end of the day, I did realize something, that like a lot of the people that you pick up in these really poor, dangerous neighborhoods, it's just normal people who have economical hardship. And those people are really decent people. There's people that end up in poor neighborhoods because they just are underaccomplished. And there's people that end up in really poor, bad neighborhoods because, they're older, they don't speak good English, or they just don't have a lot of skill sets. And those people are very decent, down-to-earth people. So not everybody that lives in a neighborhood like this is a horrible person. You do meet some really decent people in these places. The person we're going to go pick up next is one of those people that definitely is a decent person. Just real nice, down-to-earth people, caring about their lives. and probably just visiting friends or something like that. But there's a lot of people that I pick up, and you can smell it on them. You can smell that they're just, the stench of it is on them. And I think out of the 16 people that I picked up, 4 of them, you could smell that they had it on them. And I don't want that in my vehicle. And I think one of the biggest drawbacks that I see with this Uber thing is that 4 of the people that I picked up smell like something that's illegal in Florida. And I don't mean a little bit. I mean, when they got in the car, the whole car smelled like that. And I'm thinking, if I get pulled over, they're going to search us. This person could throw this in the back seat and say it's mine. Like, what happens then? What happens if you have a car accident? What happens if this person goes through an episode, which, there's definitely a lot of question marks at this whole Uber thing. And I guess you could avoid a lot of those question marks, unfortunately, by being selective about what type of neighborhoods you work. And that, it's not exactly the nicest thing to say, but it's not even the neighborhoods. Like, I guess that's why a lot of Uber drivers just stick to the airport, downtown, and bars that they know, and they don't really go far outside of those boundaries, because there's definitely a lot of uncertainty. And perhaps me not having a prejudice about neighborhoods and people as much as other people might have means that I'm more likely to be open-minded of going into these places where other Uber drivers would just say, yeah, I'm not going to go into Tice at night. But I'm not sure, but there definitely seems like there's potential for the driver to go through some pretty crappy situations, not going to lie. Whether I want to admit it or not, me and my wife live a very sheltered life. We do go into bad neighborhoods. We do travel to a lot of bad places. I do go into homeless camps, but my home life is in a suburb. My cars are new. We live a very comfortable life, and we're very sheltered, The neighborhoods we live in, the environments we're in our personal life are very good. I mean, I associate myself with very good people. When you live in certain types of neighborhoods, you have certain types of associations. My wife's a realtor. I'm a YouTuber. We're very selective about who we bring into our lives. So I've created a buffer between me and other people on a social level to where I usually don't have to deal with. If somebody has an addiction problem, they're not going to be anywhere near me. So I guess with this Uber thing, it's kind of brought down the wall of protection that I put around me and Katie. And you do end up with individuals that you're in close proximity to, people that have problems that you probably don't want to have near you. And a lot of times when you seclude yourself like that from people, you, I don't know what the right wording is to describe this, but I'm saying it's like I'm actually more naive than I think I am, and that you wouldn't think that from somebody who goes into homeless camps and who goes into bad neighborhoods, because I am very street smart, and part of being street smart is not putting a complete stranger inside of your car. So that is kind of something to contemplate. But again, I do feel like I need these life experiences of dealing with people, and if there's a few elements of people's activities that I'm not involved in, but now I'm in close proximity to them, I need to have the discipline of saying, okay, I got to be able to handle this, because a lot of times we shelter ourselves from things, but when those things are in your face, there's nothing you can do about it, I've done a great thing for me and Katie is that our work environments have been very sheltered. She's a realtor, so when she's dealing with people, they have money to buy a house. It's somebody who's well off. I'm a YouTuber. We're very selective about everybody and everything we put in our environment personally. So, with all that, we might be a little naive, and it might be good for me to sharpen up my senses dealing with people in close proximity and learning how to, manage these individuals in an environment that's out of your control, like being stuck in a car with them. So I feel like I could develop some good skills, but I'm also starting to realize what a good job I've done for my family, in that my family, we don't have to go work, in a factory where there's 100 people, or just, bad work environments or anything like that. So we're going to go pick up one last person. Now, this lady, we're going to pick her up again in a really bad neighborhood and take her to an apartment complex that looks like a nice neighborhood today, but is actually low-key a pretty bad spot. Now, if you're in Fort Myers, you'll notice that there's these vans like the one right here, and these are like mostly going to be Guatemalan taxi drivers. Now, they almost exclusively only deal with Guatemalans because Guatemalans are most of them are illegal, so they don't like dealing with people who are legal, because if a legal situation arouses, then they're afraid of being robbed or something. Obviously, the taxi drivers have a license because they're driving, so they're probably that percentage of the legal ones are gonna drive taxis. So these taxis, they're usually gonna be minivans. Most of them are gonna be Toyotas. It's all like they all look the same. They don't say taxi. But if you're in this part of Fort Myers and you see these vans, they are definitely taxi drivers. And if you don't match the profile, they may not want to pick you up. They only exclusively deal with their people because of safety issues. They know that if they're picking up a migrant worker, the migrant worker isn't going to try to, hurt them. So the remaining people that are going to use app like Uber are going to be the outliers that don't fall into, like the regular neighborhood taxis, which I know for a fact those dudes are super prejudiced. If you try to get a ride with one of those dudes, they, if you don't match the profile, they just simply won't pick you up. I mean, their taxis are unmarked, and they only kind of deal with a certain type of people, and they'll probably want to see if you're carrying groceries. Again, it's a dangerous neighborhood at night. A lot of people are illegal and stuff. So, all right, so we pick up the last person for the day, and she's actually going across town to an apartment complex off of Colonial. Now, this area today, they're building houses and new apartments there, and it's kind of a gentrified looking area. But this area back in the day, like I'm talking when I was like 19 years old, 18 years old, and I've actually been in this neighborhood since I was like 16, because I used to do scrap metal when I was younger, and I started doing that like at 16 because I got kicked out of high school in the 9th grade. So even though I lived in Naples, I spent a lot of time in this part of Fort Myers because that's where the scrap yards were. And let me tell you, these are some grimy neighborhoods, at least, in the 2000s. Now, Fort Myers has grown a lot. You got the airport, you got all the growth, you got a lot going into Fort Myers that's made Fort Myers kind of a better city today than it was back then. But back in the day, these apartments that we're going to go to, they come right up against where the scrap yards were. So what would happen is there's a canal in these apartments. It's a dead end. In other words, when you're at the end of this apartment complex, there's no way out. There's only one way in, one way out, and the way in and the way out is not on the main road. It's off to the side, which means that if you're in the back of this apartment complex and you have a canal separating the road from you, but there's a trail that comes off the back of the scrapyard, I guess what I'm trying to say is that strategically this apartment complex is the type of place that's laid out perfectly to trap out of. It's in the center of the city. The cops really can't get in there. And for a long time, when people would come out of the scrapyard, they would take this, and a lot of people that sell scrap metal back then, I never did it because I've never been a junkie. I don't have meth mouth or anything like that, but a lot of the junkies would sell their scrap metal and go down this trail along the canal, go to the end, and then there's a canal there, so the cops were on a shoemaker, let's say, or Metro, and the cops couldn't get into where people were trapping. So it was a place where the dope boys could easily see the cops coming from all directions. So this apartment complex that we're going to used to be a place where a lot of the trapping took place because the cops just couldn't get in there. I had a friend that used to live in these apartments, and all he had was a mattress on the floor because, if things got too hot, they could go from one apartment complex to the next. They didn't have furniture or nothing. I mean, these people live with just, a plastic chair and a mattress, trapping out of these apartments, and when things get hot, then they go to the next spot. But basically, you can see that they're building new apartments on both sides of the road here, and people are moving into this area thinking that they're renting luxury apartments, but what they don't know is that this is historically just been a place that's always been where all the trapping happens. But here we are, and you'll see that we go into the apartment complex off of Roan Road, but there's another major road to the side that has no entrance, and that's kind of what made this apartment complex always be a place that people are trapping out of. So what would happen is the scrappers would sell their scrap metal, come down the dirt trail, park at the end, do their transaction. The scrappers would have to go back out the way they came, and the people that were trapping could go back into these apartments. And I remember a lot of times I'd be there, and the cops would try to bust it, but again, the cops would have to go in a horseshoe shape either around the front of the apartment complex or around the scrapyards, and the people that were trapping always had an escape route. I remember more than 3 or 4 times driving through there, and the cops chasing people, and they always got away because it's just the way it's set up. You can run back into the apartments to the woods as well, and it's just the way this place is laid out was perfect for trapping, especially considering that the scrapyard would pay people in cash. So here's people that are junkies getting cash, running up to these apartments to get whatever they need. So these apartment complexes today may not, I don't think this is happening anymore, but even if it were, once a place has had stuff like this happen for so long, it's what happens. So you can see that you go in through this road here, but you can see that light up there where the green light is on the left. That's actually the major road. So once you're in here, it's kind of like a fortress. You can see that there's a gate, but it's open. And, you know, but once you get to the end of this apartment complex, yeah. One way in, one way out. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video of me Ubering through some dangerous neighborhoods in Fort Myers.